Then in 1950, Andy became something more than a model prisoner. In 1950, he became the valuable comedy and murderer who did tax returns better than H&R Block. He gave gratis estate planning advice, set up tax shelters, filled out loan applications, sometimes creatively. I can remember him sitting behind his desk in the library, patiently going over a car loan, agreed paragraph by the paragraph, with a screwhead who wanted to buy a used DeSoto, telling the guy what was good about the agreement and what was bad about it, explaining to him that it was possible to shop for a loan and not get quite so bad, steering him away from the finance companies, which in those days were sometimes a little bit better than legal loan sharks. When he finished the screwhead start to put out his hand and then drew it back to himself quickly. He forgot for a moment that he was dealing with a mascot, not a man. And he kept up the tax laws and the changes in the stock markets, and so his usefulness didn't end after he'd been in cold storage for a while. As it might have done, he began to get his library money. His running war with the sisters had ended, and nobody tossed his salad very hard. He was a good nigger. Then one day, very late in the going, perhaps around October 1967, the long-time hobby suddenly turned into something else. One night while I was in the hole, up to his waist with Raquel wedge hanging down over his ass, the pick end of his rock hammer must have suddenly sunk into the concrete past the hilt. He would have dragged some chunks of the concrete back. But he heard other falling down into the shaft, bouncing back and forth, clinking of that. Standpipe. Did he know by then that he was going to come up upon the shaft, or was he totally surprised? I don't know. He might have seen the prison blueprints by then, or he might have not. If not, you could be damn sure he found a way to look at them not long after. All at once, he must have realized that instead of just playing a game, he was playing for high stakes in terms of his own life and his own future. The highest, in terms of his own life and his own future, the highest. Even then, he couldn't have known for sure, but he must have had a pretty good idea because it was right around then that he talked to me about Zentanewel for the first time, and all of a sudden, instead of just being a toy, that stupid hole in the wall became his master of it. If he knew about the sewer pipe at the bottom of that he led under the outer wall, it did anyway. He had the key under the rock in Buxton to worry about for years. Now he had worried that some eager beaver new guard would look behind his poster and expose the whole thing, or that he would get another cellmate, or that he would, after all those years, suddenly be transferred. He had all those things on his mind for the next 8 years. All I can say is that he must have been one of those coolest men who ever lived. I would have gone completely nuts after a while living with all that uncertainty. But Andy just went on playing the games. He had to carry possibility of discovery for another 8 years, the probability of it, you might say, because no matter how carefully he stacked the cards on his favor as an inmate of a state prison, he just didn't have that many to stack. And the gods had been kind to him for a very long time, some 19 years. The most ghastly irony I can think of would have been if he had been offered a parole. Could you imagine 3 days before the parole is actually being released, he's transferred into the light security wing to undergo a complete physical and battery of vocational test. Why he's there, his old cell is completely cleaned out instead of getting his parole, and would have gotten a long term downstairs in solitary, followed by some more time upstairs but in a different cell. If he broke into the shaft of 1967, how come he didn't escape until 1975? I don't know for sure, but I can advance some pretty good guesses. Advise some pretty good guesses. First, he would have become more careful than ever. He was too smart just to push ahead at flank speed and try to get out in 8 months, or even in 18. He must have gone on widening the open on the crawl space, a little at a time, a hole as big as a teacup by the time he took his New York Year's Eve drink that year. A hole that is as big as a diner plate the time he took his birthday drink in 1968. As big as a serving tray by the time 1969 baseball season opened. For the time, I thought I should have gone much faster than it apparently did after he broke through. I mean, it seemed to me that instead of to pulverizing the crap and taking it out of his cell in the cheater gadgets I have described, he could simply let it drop down the shaft. The length of time he took makes me believe he didn't dare do that. He might have decided that the noise would arouse someone's suspicions, or if he knew about the sewer pipe, as I believe he must have, he would have been afraid that a falling chunk of concrete would break it before he was ready, screwing up the cell block sewage system and leading to an investigation. Investigation, needless to say, would lead to ruin. Still, at all, I guessed by the time Nixon was sworn for his second term, the hole would have been wide enough for him to wiggle through. And probably sooner than that. Andy was a small guy. Why didn't he go then? That's where my educated guess runs out. Folks. From this point, they become progressively wider. The possibility that the crawl space itself was clogged with crap and he had to clear it out. But that wouldn't account for all the time, so what was it? I think maybe Andy got scared. I told you as well as I can how it is to be an institutional man. At first, you can't stand those four walls. Then you get so you can abide by them. Then you can get so you accept them. And then as your body and your mind and your spirits just to life on an HO scale, you get to love them. You are told when you eat. You are told when to eat, when you can write letters, when you can smoke, if you're at work in the laundry in the plate shop, you're assigned 5 minutes of each hour. When you can go to the bathroom. For 35 years, my time was 25 minutes after the hour. And after 35 years, that was the only time I ever felt the need to take a piss or have a crap. 25 minutes past the hour, and if for some reason I couldn't go, the need would pass at 30 after and come back at 25 past the next hour. I think Andy had been wrestling with that tiger, that institutional syndrome, and also with that bulking fears that all of it might have been for nothing. How many nights must he have lain awake under his poster, thinking about the sewer line, knowing that one chance was all he'd ever get. The blueprints might have told him how big the pipe was, but the blueprint couldn't tell him what it would be like inside the pipe if he weren't able to breathe without choking. If the rats were big enough and mean enough to fight instead of retreating, and the blueprint could have told him what he'd find at the end of the pipe when and if he got there. Here's a joke, even funnier than the parole would have been. Andy breaks into the sewer line, crawls through 500 yards of choking, shit-smelling darkness, and comes up against a heavy gauze mesh screen at the end of it. Ha ha, very funny.
that would have been out of his mind. And if the long shot actually came in and he was able to get out, would he be able to get some civilian clothes and get away from the vicinity of the prison undetected? Last of all, suppose he got out of the pipe, got away from Shawshank before the alarm was raised, got to Buxton, overturned the right rock, and found nothing beneath. Not necessarily something so dramatic as arriving at the right field and discovering that a high-rise apartment building had been erected on the spot or that it had been turned into a supermarket parking lot. It could have been that some little kid who liked rocks noticed a piece of volcanic glass, turned it over, saw the deposit box key, and took both it and the rock back to his room as souvenirs. Maybe a November hunter kicked the rock, left the key exposed, or a squirrel or a cat. And a squirrel or a crow with a liking for bright, shiny things had taken it away. Maybe there had been spring floods one year, breaching the wall, washing the key away. Maybe anything. So I think, wild guess or not, that Andy just froze in place for a while. After all, you can't lose if you don't bet. What did you have to lose, you ask? His library, for one thing. The poisoned piece of institutional life for another. Any future chance to grab his safe identity. But he finally did it, just as I have told you. He tried, and didn't he succeed in a spectacular fashion, you tell me? But did he get away, you ask? What happened after? What happened when he got to the meadow and turned over that rock, always assuming the rock was still there? I can't describe that scene for you, because this institutional man is still in this institution and expects to be for years to come. But I'll tell you this. Very late in the summer of 1975, on September 15th to be exact, I got a postcard which had been mailed from the tiny town of McNairy, Texas. That town is on the American side of the border, directly across from El Porvenir. The message side of the card was totally blank, but I know it in my heart as surely as I know that we're all going to die someday. McNairy was where he crossed. McNairy, Texas. So that's my story, Jack. I never believed how long it would take to write it all down, or how many pages it would take. I started writing just after I got that postcard, and here I am finishing up on January 14th, 1976. I've used 3 pencils right down to knuckle stubs and a whole tablet of paper. I've kept the pages carefully hidden. Not that many could read my hen tracks anyways. It stirred up more memories than I could have ever believed. Writing about yourself seems to be a lot like sticking a branch into clear river water and roiling up the muddy bottom. Well, you weren't writing about yourself, I hear someone in the peanut gallery saying. You were writing about Andy Dufresne. You're nothing but a minor character in your own story, but you know, that's just not so. It's all about me, every damned word of it. Andy was the part of me that they could never lock up. The part of me that will rejoice when the gates finally open for me and I walk out in my cheap suit with my $20 of mad money in my pocket. That part of me will rejoice no matter how old and broken and scared the rest of me is. I guess it's just that Andy had more of that part of me and used it better. There are others here like me, others who remember Andy. We're glad he's gone, but a little sad too. Some birds are not meant to be caged, that's all. Their feathers are too bright, their songs too sweet and wild. So you let them go, or when you open the cage to feed them, somehow fly out past you. And the part of you that knows it was wrong to imprison them in the first place rejoices. But still, the place where you live is much more drab and empty for their departure. That's the story, and I'm glad I told it. Even if it is a bit inconclusive, and even though some of my memories are pencil prodded up, like the branch poking up the river mud, made me feel a little sad and even older than I am. Thank you for listening, and Andy, if you're really down there, as I believe you are, look at the stars for me just after sunset, and touch the sand and wade in the water, and feel free.